All right, ladies and gentlemen, we got a very special guest co-anchor with us this week. We are joined by the one and only hardcore legend, Saint Mick himself. Mick Foley is in the house. Look at that smile. He's happy to be here. We're super happy to be here. Mick, thank you for joining us on the Goodable Show.
Yeah, I was really excited to hear about it. This came to me via my manager, and we get a lot of different propositions. And in this one, I said, hey, I'll handle this one myself. And I jumped on the email with you, and here we are.
Well, listen, we're all about talking about all of the good things that are happening in the world. And that means hanging out with really good people. And you are at the top of that list for all the good things that you do.
I appreciate that. We could use a little more good news in the world.
I hear you. I hear you. People know my background. Look, I covered bad news for 10 years. I was on ABC and CNN for a big part of my life. And one day I woke up and I said, you know what? What if instead of telling people how bad the world is, I just spent the rest of my life telling people how good the world can be? And let's see what happens. And that's how this kind of came about.
I like that. It's very admirable of you. Very much needed too.
Awesome. Thank you for the good words. For our audience that is tuning in, we want to let you know that Mick has agreed to be a guest anchor for us. So not only are we going to be talking about good news, he's going to put on his anchorman hat and help us deliver some of that good news. It's just something that I'm really excited about. But before we get to that, Mick, tell us where you are right now.
I'm in Atlanta, Georgia. And I'm in a really cool house that I rented on Airbnb. A lot of character in this house. It is a Prohibition era bootlegging house, also used as a recording studio for a local artist named Gypsy Jones. It's the only place I'm looking up at there is a recording studio above me. It's filled with character. It's a great old house. And the woman who restored it has a great little business next door selling smoothies and healthy sandwiches and coffee. And it's the most convenient place I've ever stayed. I walk out the front door at like 2 p.m. when I wake up. I get a healthy meal. And of course, I'll eat some much less healthy things as the day progresses, but at least I'm off to a good start. And as I've mentioned to you off air, I'm not here by myself.
Do you want to just leave it at that, or do you want to explain who you're there with?
Originally, you see, I'm going to be part of the NWA National Wrestling Alliance pay-per-view in Atlanta. And then I'm doing my own event the next day on December 5th, which is I do a storytelling show, like a one-man show. Fun. I mean, I don't consider it stand-up because I don't put the emphasis on laughs, although some of the stories are funny. And in this case, it's a serious subject. We're donating 100% of the proceeds to a group called NAMI Georgia. NAMI is an acronym for National Alliance for Mental Illness. And it is my way of honoring a friend named Daphne, who we lost a few months ago when she took her own life. And so we're trying to get the word out and raise money. And I'm really excited that her mom is going to be there, and we're going to try to honor her career. So I was turning this into something of a vacation, including a Hawks game tonight. And then my family can't make it because they can't find someone to watch the dogs. We have 2 dogs that are not completely healthy. And so I was like, I've got this beautiful house. What am I going to do? So I went on a show called High Spots, and we were attempting to raise money for a wrestler named Jimmy Rave, who had recently had both his legs amputated due to MRSA. And he was way short of a GoFundMe goal. And the GoFundMe goal is only going to get him halfway to what the bills are going to be anyway. And so I put the house up, for hang out with me for 3 days, go to the NWA show, my own show, and then I'm throwing in the Hawks game once I found out they're basketball fans. And so that raised some money, and we met our goal. We raised $22,000, not for just this, but I gave away some not gave away, but auctioned off memorabilia and some other personal interactions. I think I have to visit 2 fans' homes to watch wrestling with them, one outside Minnesota and one in Indiana. And we got to our goal of $22,000 in 4 hours. So I was really excited.
22,000 in 4 hours. That's incredible.
Yeah.
So I want to talk to you about all the good that you put out in the world. A lot of athletes, entertainers, celebrities, influencers, you name it, they make their careers about themselves. You've had such an amazing career in professional wrestling, but what you've been doing lately is using a lot of your time to help other people, to help them live better lives. It's also the holiday season, and people know that you have this thing about dressing up with Santa Claus.
Yeah.
What makes you want to use your platform and your voice to help as many people as you can?
Well, when I was active everyday wrestling through the early part of 2000, my career was about me. It's kind of like in order to be successful, you almost have blinders on, and they don't allow you to see the outside world, and especially a lot of the suffering that's going on. You're vaguely aware that it's there, but you're so focused on your goals that it wasn't until after I retired that I started looking around at the world around me, seeing it didn't revolve around me. And I realized that of the things I missed about wrestling, one of them was the chance to see the Wish children through Make-A-Wish and other wish granting organizations. I was very rarely someone's wish, but there weren't many days when there wasn't somebody from Make-A-Wish, a child, at the shows. And so I would go over to them. Now, when I was early Mankind, some of the kids used to cry, and I was asked, please, please, I know you mean well, but please, you scaring the children. But as time went by and that character lightened up a great deal, I found I really enjoyed interacting with the children. So in 2000, I think that was the first time where I was like, I want to try to make a difference. I started volunteering. I think the first call I made was to the Paul Newman's Hole in the Wall gang camp. And I became a regular. When I say regular, I mean I would show up every week for a day. I wasn't there the whole week, but I did show up for a day or 2 days at a time. And I remember there was another one. I'm trying to think of the name of the camp. It was out on the eastern end of Long Island, Camp Adventure. So I called them, and they said, "Well, you'll have to take a course." At first, I wanted to say, "I'm Mick Foley. I just show up, you know." And then my wife was like, "Hey, Mick, there's other places you can go." I said, "You know what? Anything worth doing is worth doing well." So I went. I took the 6-hour course, and I was better off for it. And I became a pretty good volunteer for Camp Adventure for a few years. But I just got used to trying to do things. My wife and I had been sponsoring a couple children overseas through Child Fund International since 1992.
Wow.
Yeah. So now this year brings the 30th year that we're sponsoring children. I think we have.
But why do it though? Like that's the question is why do it? You're very successful. You could probably just live a really easy, good life, but you're doing something that a lot of people don't. What is it inside you that makes you want to give?
Well, to be fair, sponsoring a child at that time was about $18 a month. Maybe it's $30 now. And I thought I was making a lot of contributions in 2000 when I had my really biggest year. And because it seemed like I was constantly writing checks, but I was writing checks for $25, for $100. So when I saw my taxes and saw that I only donated 1%, I was a little embarrassed. And so I not only stepped up as far as volunteering, but I did start funding some bigger projects. I funded what's known as country schools, which are really small schools in a West African country of Seirra Leone. And especially when the economy took a hit in 2006, 2007, I think, I thought, well, they're going to be way off. So it's time for me to step up. And it was tough on us too, because a lot of the savings, was disappearing in the stock market at that time. But we did step up, and we built a handful of schools in Sierra Leone, and coming up in Kenya, where I'll be funding a small school, 2-classroom school, but with running water and a latrine, which is really, almost as important as the education itself.
How does that make you feel, knowing that you're making such a difference to people? Like you're giving them an education, you're giving them a head start on life.
Well, when I went to visit Sierra Leone in 2010, despite the fact they did not receive wrestling there, a lot of the world does receive wrestling in some form or another, and there are a lot of African countries that are big fans of professional wrestling, but Sierra Leone did not, at least at that time. And nonetheless, that was the biggest response I'd ever received in my life, and I didn't receive it because I was a wrestling guy. I received it because I was the guy who had cared about their community.
That's incredible. So you have more fans there because of what you've done outside of the ring than in the ring.
Yeah. So when people are like, "Oh, I wish I could be a star. I wish I get that kind of reaction," I'm like, actually, you can. And you don't have to, you don't have to be thrown off a cell structure. You don't have to wrestle Terry Funk and barbed wire in Japan. You just can give, and you will be appreciated.
I want to ask you a lot more about how Saint Mick came to be, but before we get to that, we want to introduce a new segment to all of our viewers out there that we call "Reading the News with Saint Mick." Mick has agreed graciously to be an anchorman for us for this special segment. And normally you see me reading the good news. But in this situation, Mick himself is going to be reading some of the good news headlines of the week. So I'm going to do what we do in television, and I'm going to say, over to you, Mick.
Hello, this is Mick Foley, my state-of-the-art Walgreens reader glasses. And I'm your special guest host on Goodable. You know how they say age is just a number? Well, a 70-year-old woman did something amazing. This is Deidre Walenicki. She just became the oldest person ever to climb the El Capitan Mountain at Yosemite National Park. I was going to say Yosemite just for the joke, but I didn't go there, okay? It's one of the world's most difficult mountains to climb, and she did it all in just 13 hours. And the best part, she did it on her birthday. You ready for another one?
Let's do it. I think you got another career in this.
Next, we want to take you to Australia, where a company came up with a great idea to cheer kids up while they're in the hospital. It's called Super T. It's a hospital gown that doubles as a superhero costume. It comes with a cape and has a special opening at the arms so that kids can get their cancer treatment. So far, they've given out 5,000 Super Tees to children in hospitals. What a great way to make kids feel special. And now next up, we take you to the gridiron. That's right, Mick Foley here with a great, happy football story. This football team just made history and proved all their doubters wrong. The Riverside Cubs just made the California State Championship game. That's special on its own, right? But here's the details. What makes them even more special is that they're all students from the California School for the Deaf. Every single player on the team is deaf, and they communicate on the field using ASL, American Sign Language. Now that is an incredible achievement. Go Cubs, go. I'm Mick Foley, and this has been your good news.
Mick, that was incredible. I think you should add anchorman to your official bio. That was great. You're a pro. You're going to put me out of a job someday if you can deliver good news like that. I want to keep talking about good things in your life. I don't want to take too much of your time, but this is important because we're entering the holiday season. And I want to ask you something personal. What's the best thing that anyone has ever done for you, or maybe the best thing that you've been part of during the holidays?
Oh, during the holidays. Oh, let me see. The best thing anyone's done for us is that we received a visit from Santa in Christmas Eve 2012. And this can be seen in the movie documentary, I Am Santa Claus. My children were on the fence. We'd had I have a son on the autism spectrum, and he was crushed the year before when he did not meet Santa Claus. We heard some jingling outside. He ran outside. When he came back in, the room was filled with presents. I thought it was pretty magical, but he broke down. He said he wanted to see him. Now he never would. So the real Santa, when I say real Santa, don't scoff. He changed his name legally to Santa Claus in New York State. So yeah, you have to admire that level of commitment. He arrived on Christmas Eve around 3:30 a.m. Christmas Day. And that was just it was just a great moment for our family, a moment I'll never forget. And more importantly, I was a freshman Santa Claus. It was my first year in the red suit. And it made me aware of the possibility of trying to spread that same joy to other people. And so I have. But I have a friend who plays bass for Norah Jones, and they invited me to be their Santa. I not only had to wait until my children came home from their winter concert, but then I had to drive to Brooklyn, and I got lost to the point where I was thinking about just going home. I was really frustrated. Santa shouldn't be swearing. I'm not a swearer by nature, if you don't count the inner confines of my car, where I do. I think we all do, right? And then I thought to myself, you don't go in there and do the best job you can as Santa, you don't deserve to wear the red sweatsuit. At that time, my beard had been grown out for about 8 months. This is the first year I haven't grown it out. I do have a good theatrical beard, a traditional beard that I can wear, and I will. But I was had the full beard, bleached out, everything. And when I finally walked into that building, there was only about 5 minutes left in the show. So I came on, I said my little piece of Santa, and then I watched, from 10 feet away as they went into their last song, which was Silent Night. And as Nora's singing, I get this feeling in my head that says, if you don't walk up there and start singing Silent Night with Norah Jones as Santa, you are going to regret it for the rest of your life. And so I did, not realizing there were 6 stanzas of Silent Night, and I know 2 of them. All this time, I thought I ruined Silent Night for Norah Jones. And then 6 months later, it turns out she was doing an interview for a new album release, and my name came up, and she was so complimentary. And she went in off, they didn't even ask her about me being Santa. She said, he's probably the best Santa I've ever seen. As a matter of fact, last year, we didn't even know if Mick was going to make it. And at the last minute, he walked in, and it was like the real Kris Kringle had entered the building. And this is an exact quote. She said, I don't know how to describe it because it was so surreal. He looked so real. He is Santa. And in that one moment, I was like, oh, Santa's not about like being on WWE television in front of millions. Santa's about making that one difference in one person's life, making an adult feel like a child just for a moment, or giving the children an experience that they, will maybe never forget. So my feeling is, a lot of people cast it off and go, oh, what are you, one of them small Santas? And I go, first of all, small Santas work really hard. And it's something that people aspire to, not something that people settle on being, with some exceptions. There are some exceptions, but for a lot of the guys, they take it very seriously. When they put on the red suit, they don't smoke, they don't drink, they don't curse in public, and they really allow the better part of themselves to emerge. And I think that became my goal, to be that kind and patient the whole year, even when I did not have the red suit on.
Wow, that's beautiful, Mick. I want to end with one last question for you. You're a really positive guy. If people follow you on Twitter and social media, they know that, for example, if a squirrel does something awesome, you're going to post that. That's just the kind of guy you are. What's your advice out there for people that are struggling? It's been a hard year. Let's face it, it's been a hard couple of years for a lot of people. Hard on the economy, hard on the health system, hard on just life in general, right?
Yeah.
What's your advice to people out there who are struggling with anxiety or depression or mental illness, or even just kind of, like they don't know what's wrong, but they're just kind of down? What's your advice to make it through this?
Really difficult year, almost 2 years, year and 3 quarters, to the point where one time I was going to the movie theater where I was almost assuredly going to be by myself, and I'd mask up in the theater. I just got this thought. I pulled over on the side of the road. I just tweeted out, I think that this coronavirus has revealed loneliness to be an epidemic all its own. And, when you touch on something, because the likes build up right away. And then so I think it was about 10,000 likes within an hour or two. If there's a silver lining to all of this, it could be that it is erase the stigma of reaching out for help. That some of us realize, we should all realize we're all in this together. But some of us have realized that there are wrestler PSAs where we talk about reaching out for help. The reason, I mentioned I'm doing my show on December 5th for honor to raise money for National Alliance of Mental Illness, the Georgia chapter, because my friend Daphne, she couldn't overcome that burden she felt, and she took her own life. And I was one of several people who tried to reach out to her that day and got the answering machine. If she had hung in there, who knows? Who knows if she'd been able to hang in there, if one of us had been able to get through, we could have talked her through the night, and maybe it would have been a better tomorrow. But I would say for anyone out there who's struggling, just know that there is help. And I would suggest doing something to make the world a little better for someone around you. It's been said that we all begin to do these, acts, charitable acts, because of the way they make us feel. But you never know. Raking the leaves of a neighbor who is unable to, shoveling a driveway for somebody, just calling in on somebody to check on how they're doing. There's any number of small ways. There was this T-shirt I used to have from the Marty Lyons Foundation, and the back of it, I think, was really a great point. It said, 100 years from now, it won't matter what house I lived in or what type of car I drove, but it will matter that I made a difference in the life of a child. So you just start one smile at a time. So for me, it's still, you really still can't get out there as Santa unless you're socially distanced, because it's such a journey. Even in a regular year, it's a tough environment because you're fending off germs every day. But I've got my Santa letters. I write about 50 Santa letters a year by hand.
Wow.
They look like the big guys writing. I worked hard to make it that way. And so
you trained to write like Santa so that you could write Santa letters to people.
Yeah, you want me to show you a letter?
I'd love to see it.
So this is what my letter from Santa looks.
So you wrote that?
Yeah. So when I had my hip and knee replaced in 2017, and I wanted to do these handwritten letters from Santa, but my handwriting was illegible to the point where I wrote a ceremonial first letter to my two younger boys. They weren't of the magic age anymore, but I thought it'd be fun to write them a letter. They couldn't read it. And I thought, well, that gets in the way of a positive experience. So when I was recovering from the hip surgery in April 2017, I just ordered a book for $6 called Calligraphy for Children. And I just started working on it. My wife thought I was going through a midlife crisis, because she'd wake up and there'd be like love song lyrics laying around. Christmas lyrics as well. And then I just started experimenting, also realizing that the first and foremost goal should be that children need to be able to read this quickly.
Sure.
We're talking about children who don't grow up like we did, reading handwriting very often. So it has to be neat enough to read, not so fancy that it gets in the way of that experience. And so I think this it came out pretty good. So what I do is I wrote about 40 of them and sent them to a friend of mine who is the proprietor and owner of Santa's Candy Castle in Santa Claus, Indiana. So it not only has that cool, I write the return postage in my own handwriting, and then it comes with the Santa Claus, Indiana postal cancellation. And it's just one more layer of authenticity. So if a child is my goal is to take a child who's on the fence and give that family one more year in the magic zone. And then I have a special letter for children who no longer believe, where I basically say, hey, Santa is not a guy who flies through the sky with a team of reindeer. Santa is a feeling. It's it's that magic in the air that makes us nicer and kinder, gentler. And then I ask if they would like to be part of that team by making Christmas as wonderful as possible for their younger brother and sister. I got this one great interaction where the mom said the daughter took her letter to her room, and she came out and she had tears in her eyes, and she said, "Mom, I want to make Christmas as magical as possible." for Matthew, and I can't remember her younger sister's name, Matthew and Megan. And I thought, wow, it takes a while to write these letters. Each one takes about 45 minutes, but that's clearly 45 minutes well spent.
I'm almost in tears. Like, that's such a beautiful thing. Such a beautiful thing that you look. It's one thing to like print out a letter and sign it at the bottom, right? And sign it or something. But to take the time to write them by hand, like, that's just incredible.
Well, you know what? I've got these letters from 1968, 1969, from when I was a child, from Santa's workshop in North Pole, New York, and Santa's Village in Jefferson, New Hampshire. And I treasure these things, even though one of them says, "Dear little friend," and the other one says, "Dear," and then what is clearly my dad's writing, Jackie and Mickey, but they're still amazing. And so when I hear that people are like putting the letters in a special place, some of the parents take the letters out and put them up during the holidays, and some of them frame them and keep them up year round. So it's something I really enjoy doing it. And it's like I said, my little way of trying to make the season bright. Also, when we did this fundraiser for my friend who lost his legs, we put one Santa letter up with $100 reserve, and they went up to $350, and two people at $350 agreed to both pay it. So I wrote 2 letters, and we raised $700 for a good cause. So I think next year I may do the same thing. I have like 10, maybe 10 of them available, put the price up kind of high. And obviously it's not something that everybody can afford, but maybe raise, $2,000 or $3,000 for children in need.
It's a beautiful thing when you do something good and it creates even more goodness for other people.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing. Listen, Saint Mick Foley, we're so thrilled that you joined us. Normally when we end a show, we do something where we say, hey, thanks everybody for tuning in. Stay safe and stay Goodable. But you're our honorary anchor for the day. So I want to throw it back to you. This is what we call ad-libbing in the news game, where I throw it back to you and you can wrap up the show. Are you cool with that?
Yeah.
All right. And listen, we know you're one of the best ad-libbers and improvisers in the game. Your record speaks for itself. But let's do that. To wind up the show, we're going to throw it back to Mick Foley to take us away. Mick, it's all yours.
Stay classy, San Diego.